Incredible betrayal revealed, Mafia boss discovers his two maids' shocking, hidden scheme. Ryan, the lion Russo stared at his reflection in the polished oak desk of his grand office, the room cloaked in shadows illuminated only by the light filtering through the blinds. The world outside was blissfully unaware of the constant storm brewing just beneath the surface of his life. He had forged a legacy built on strength, loyalty, and the protection of his family, yet now, feelings of unease clutched at his gut. Behind the closed doors of his suburban fortress, Ryan felt the juxtaposition of his ruthless reputation battling with a longing for normalcy. Evenings spent with his elderly mother, watching reruns of her favorite shows, felt like a fragile oasis. Every laugh, each shared meal, was a reminder of the stakes of family ties that anchored him through the rising chaos around him. Confiding in Tony, his childhood friend who managed their legitimate business ventures, felt bittersweet. They shared an unwavering bond, yet the undercurrents of tension began to gnaw at him. He hired Maria and Anna not just for their work ethic but for the spark they exuded. They reminded him of the dreams he once chased, the grit embodying the American value of perseverance. Yet that glint of hope soon turned shadowy. He sensed something was amiss. Leaks, whispers, betrayal crept into his territory, rustling the leaves of a carefully manicured life. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the files piled up in his office, Ryan stumbled upon an innocuous-looking folder. The moment he flipped it open, his heart sank. Names he recognized from whispered conversations and back-alley dealings danced across the pages. Next, a set of names unfamiliar: Maria and Anna. Did he dare to put it all together? Panic coursed through him. Had the two women, whom he trusted to care for his home and his mother, turned his own walls against him? The weight of betrayal crashed down as the thought slipped into his mind. The very same struggles he admired in them now tainted by deceit. His muscles tensed as a tidal wave of emotions crashed over him. Anger pulsed alongside an ache of disappointment, as he weighed the prospect of revenge against understanding. Could Maria and Anna, once embodiments of hope, truly be agents of destruction in his carefully curated world? Ryan wrestled with the implications, the shadows in his mind clawing at every memory of their laughter and their unyielding spirit. Time felt stretched, each second punctured by the suffocating anticipation of confrontation. He could already feel the pulse in his temples as he shifted in his chair, preparing for a reckoning that would test everything he stood for. The stakes had sharpened his empire, his legacy on the line, and doubt twisted within him. Loyalty had been his currency for years, but what did that mean if turned inward against him? As he paced the room, glimpses of his mother caught his attention from the corner. Her eyes, soft yet knowing, seemed to question his next move. In that moment, Ryan stood at the precipice of a monumental choice. Would he strike back against those who had so easily breached his trust, or reach for understanding in the echoes of their sacrifices? Tension knit through his every nerve, whispering that the answers lay cloaked in ambiguity, waiting just out of reach. Ryan's mind churned like a dormant volcano on the brink of eruption. Each step around the oak desk felt heavier under the weight of the revelations threatening to unravel everything he had built. The flickering light danced across the room, but it did nothing to illuminate the dark corners of his thoughts where doubt resided like an unwelcome guest. His instincts screamed for action. He felt compelled to confront Maria and Anna immediately, to lay bare the truth he feared was festering between them. But what if he was wrong? What if all this was a misunderstanding? Those questions clawed at him, doubt mingling with worry, as the names on that page haunted his mind. Each tick of the clock seemed to synchronize with his racing heartbeat, urging him toward a decision. In a low voice, he muttered to himself, "This is about more than just betrayal. It's about trust, a value I've prided myself on." With their laughter still echoing, he tried to remember the lightness they brought into his otherwise meticulous life. Yet the sting of potential treachery dulled those memories, leaving only the bitter residue of potential loss that he leaned against the desk, closing his eyes for a moment. The soft creak of the office door caught his attention. Tony stepped in, concern etched across his face, a stark reminder of the loyalty they'd vowed to each other. "Ryan, you all right? I heard you were in here." "Not now, Tony." The words escaped Ryan's lips sharper than he intended. He turned abruptly, realization dawning that his friend's presence now felt intrusive. Each barrel of suspicion loaded into his thoughts threatened his ability to operate with clarity. "Listen, we need to talk strategy. Something feels off. You know that gut feeling that never lies?" Tony pressed, stepping into the room further. "You're in a position of power, and it's crucial you don't let emotions dictate your next steps." Ryan growled softly, frustration simmering just below the surface. "It's easy for you to say that. You haven't had your trust shattered by people you thought cared." Tony paused, the weight of understanding coursing through the silence. "Betrayal hits hard, but it's vital you keep your wits about you. We can't afford paranoia, Ryan." "I know. I know." Ryan snapped back, striding to the window to look out at the world he had vowed to protect. He observed families across the street, living lives unencumbered by the darkness his decisions often invited. Anger roiled inside him at the betrayal looming closer by the second. Wasn't that supposed to be his territory? Turning back to Tony, he took a deep breath. "You're right. I can't act impulsively. Maybe I need to gather more information before I confront them. But how? How do I find out the truth without revealing my suspicions?" "There are ways, Ryan. Leverage what you've built, those connections are assets." Tony's voice was calm, grounded amid the swirling chaos in Ryan's mind. "Check on their activities, talk to a few folks, just be discreet. Knowledge is your strongest weapon right now." Ryan considered this approach, weighing how far he would go to protect his empire. It would require stealth, and perhaps deceit of his own, an emotional line he had vowed never to cross. Yet, the prospect of losing everything to betrayal stirred something dark within him. As he set about making plans, the phone rang, interrupting the tempest within. He hesitated at the ringing before answering, uncertain of the news on the other end. "What now?" "Ryan, it's about Maria and Anna," said a voice he recognized, laced with urgency. "You need to hear this." His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't expected the call, and as his heart raced, he questioned whether this could truly be the lead he'd been searching for, or another layer of deception tightening around him. The moment of truth was dawning, he could feel it, every instinct urging him to act. Ryan's fingers trembled as he grasped the phone, his heart pounding with anticipation. Each word uttered by the voice on the other end held the weight of his world, his gut churned with the need for answers. "What do you know?" he demanded, channeling the urgency of the moment. "Let us meet. I can't say too much over the phone." "It's sensitive," the voice replied, a mixture of urgency and fear lacing the words. "No. Give me something. How do you know Maria and Anna? What's really going on?" A pause, a beat heavy with contemplation, hung in the air. "I have my sources, but you need to trust me on this. They've been meeting with someone you don't want to be associated with. It's bigger than what you think." Ryan's mind spun, images of betrayal swirling like a tempest. Confronting the women without evidence loomed like a chasm ready to swallow him whole. But this was no ordinary affair, it felt personal. He had allowed them into not only his life but also his heart's inner sanctum. "Fine. Where?" 10 minutes at the cafe on 5th. "I know it's not the ideal spot, but it's close, and we can't risk being seen." Ryan hung up and stared into the reflection of his own eyes in the glass. Steeling himself required an act of will, a mental shift from disbelief to determination. He took slow, grounding breaths, feeling the residual adrenaline jolt through his veins. It was time to be the master of his fate, a role he had always relished but now found himself fearing. The cafe buzzed with life as he walked in, laughter and conversation buzzed like static in his ears. He scanned the crowd, searching for the informant, gripping the edge of the table, his fingers digging into the wood, grounding himself in the reality of the moment. He needed to listen, to absorb everything he could without letting emotions distort his purpose. As the door swung open, a familiar figure emerged, and Ryan's heart sank. It was someone he considered an ally. Mark, one of his longtime connections, slid into the seat across from him, an uneasy grimace replacing his usual confidence. "What do you have?" Ryan asked, cutting straight to the chase. Mark hesitated, fidgeting with his coffee cup as if preparing for a confession. "It's worse than you imagined. They've been cutting deals behind your back, connections with some dangerous individuals. This is not just about betrayal, it's about your empire, Ryan." Every word felt like fresh ice chipping away at his insides. Dangerous? How? Real estate deals, possibly shady investments. They're playing both sides, and the longer you let this go unchecked, the more you risk your influence. Each revelation became both a blow and a spark, each piece of information ignited a cold fire of furious resolve. How had he been so blind? Trust, he realized, was not merely an option, it was a responsibility. Losing his authority was one thing, but watching the foundations he built crumble at the hands of those he cherished was intolerable. "Where are they now?" Ryan whispered, the fury throbbing like a drum in his chest. "I don't know. But if we act fast, we can turn this around." You confronted them, show them you're on to their game. Confrontation loomed on the horizon like a storm, tension twisted in his gut, a sharp juxtaposition between fear and the adrenaline of potential power regained. This was not just a professional risk, it was a test of his leadership and resilience in the face of personal disdain. As he left the cafe, Ryan felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders and every instinct screamed to protect what was his. Plans churned in his mind, strategy and sleight of hand merging like instincts garnered over years of survival. But just as he stepped outside, a figure stepped from the shadows. "Ryan," Anna said, her voice cool and steady. "We need to talk." And in that moment, he knew the confrontation he had been dreading had arrived, not on his terms, but on theirs. Ryan's heart quickened as he faced Anna, the weight of their shared history flooding his mind. He had always seen her as a confidant, someone who understood the intricacies of his ambitions and the sacrifices he made to build his empire. Yet now, standing before her, he felt a rift expand between them, a chasm created by mistrust and betrayal. "What do you want?" Ryan's voice emerged with a steadiness he didn't entirely feel. He had emotions roiling inside him, but he needed to project control. An accusatory tone would only spark further defensiveness. Anna tilted her head, her green eyes calculating. "You're not thinking clearly, Ryan. Whatever you heard, it's not the whole story." He could hear the implied warning beneath her calm facade, a reminder that she was still someone with access to layers of context he now regretted overlooking. "Try me," he replied, challenging her to break the silence and explain the calculus behind her choices. "What you think is happening isn't betrayal. We were trying to protect you. There are things you don't know about the people you're dealing with." Her voice lowered as she leaned in conspiratorially. "The deals they're proposing are dangerous. You'd be stepping into water that could drown you." Ryan's mind raced. Protect him? How had their paths diverged so drastically that she thought deception was necessary for his safety? "So you chose to go behind my back instead?" His patience threatened to snap. "You put me in a position where I can't trust you, and that undermines everything we've built. That's not fair. We were trying to find leverage. To ensure you'd be safe when the time came to make decisions." There was a pang of desperation in her voice, hinting that she still sought his approval somewhere within the confrontation. "Leverage?" He scoffed, feeling the audacity of her words unravel into anger. "You chose to be complicit in schemes without my knowledge. That is a betrayal, whether it's masked as leverage or not." A silence enveloped them, vibrant yet pregnant with unspoken accusations. Anna blinked, but her resolve remained. I think you're overreacting. Your empire isn't just you, Ryan. It's a network. We've been keeping our heads above water while ensuring nothing short-circuits your growth. Truth mingled with deceit in the tangled web they found themselves in. Ryan could see her perspective. He had always prided himself on taking calculated risks, but he had also firmly believed that honesty should be the cornerstone of his alliances. What were you really aiming for, Anna? Control? Power? Survival, Ryan? She snapped back, her self-possession fracturing. It's not what you think. The individuals I've met aren't just dangerous, they're ambitious. They're willing to crush anything standing in their way, and if you think for a second they wouldn't take you down too, you're mistaken. Ryan's brain flickered with déjà vu, grounding him in moments past where trust had been both a blessing and a curse. The people closest to him had betrayed him before, the reminder dug into him like a splinter. Why should I believe you now? The words fell flat, leaving the air heavy with skepticism. Anna's response came too quickly. Because I've always been honest with you. What's happening now is more reasons for us to be united. We need to craft a strategy together, face these threats, or everything we've worked for will vanish. A glimmer of realization pierced Ryan's internal storm. This wasn't only a test of loyalty, it was a critical juncture in his leadership, forcing him to confront a harsh truth: his trust had limits, yet his empire's well-being demanded he adapt and evolve, yet questions lingered, whispering doubts in the recesses of his mind. What if she was right? What if there existed a dangerous reality he hadn't considered? Responses spiraled and shaped angles of action, but clarity eluded him. Fine, we'll talk strategy. His tone assumed a commanding edge as he found his footing once more. But I'll be bringing Mark into this conversation. I need everyone on the same page. The tension shifted as he saw a flicker of relief in her eyes, but he remained acutely aware that the weight of betrayal hadn't dissipated. Their alliance had changed irrevocably, and just as he turned to leave, the uneasy truth crept back: their enemies were as close as their own decisions. What would commuting with Mark, alongside Anna, yield in this complex game of trust? I hope you're right about this, Anna, he said, more to reassure himself than her. The price of trust can be deadly. As he stepped back into the bustling street, a chilling thought gripped him. This was only the beginning, and with his empire's future hanging by a thread, he was thrust into a game of strategy that would test not only his professional mettle but the very heart of who he was. The true confrontation loomed, and with it came the question: how could he turn the tide when it felt like a storm was coming from every direction? Ryan's thoughts spiraled as he walked through the crowded streets, the noise fading into an indistinct hum. His confidence, once unshakable, felt fragile now, a shadow of its former self. Ambitions that once burned bright transformed into flickers of doubt. He needed to regroup, to clear the clutter in his mind, and decide how to steer his empire through the turmoil threatening to engulf it. The urban landscape, with its towering skyscrapers and busy avenues, mirrored his internal chaos. Each face around him held stories and struggles, yet he felt an encroaching isolation. As his mind wandered the labyrinth of swirling thoughts, he confronted the hard question: how could he trust again? The people he had once known and relied on now felt like masks hiding true intentions. Reaching a nearby cafe, he sank into a corner table, allowing the comforting aroma of brewing coffee to claw back a sense of focus. He pulled out his phone, staring at the screen as uncertainty gripped him. Should he reach out to Mark immediately? Or formulate a plan first? Anna's appeal for unity echoed in his mind, yet the betrayal festered, looming over any thoughts of collaboration. From the depths of his frustration, an idea began to emerge. Instead of ambivalence, he could use this moment as a pivot for change. He decided that he needed to build a strategy while dissecting every piece of information he had. But where to begin? The answer hit him: he needed to reevaluate his alliances and confront the reality of each partnership that formed the backbone of his ambitions. Engaging Mark would require a direct approach, a confrontation to unveil hidden facets of loyalty. He sent a message requesting an urgent meeting, framing it as essential for the welfare of the Empire. A decision made one to reclaim control over the narrative of his own life. With each heartbeat, Ryan sensed his resolve solidifying, like steel forming in a furnace. He realized he was capable of more than just assembling a group to tackle an issue. He was stepping into a role that required him to survey the chessboard, anticipate moves, and recognize the power dynamics at play. Leadership did not simply mean taking charge, it was about reading the landscape and adapting in real-time. As the meeting with Mark approached, a growing anticipation mixed with nerves. He rehearsed his words in silence, crafting a narrative that would not only address the present crisis but underline a fresh beginning. Trust would need to be rebuilt, and transparency fostered with an ironclad will. By the time he met Mark, Ryan was ready. They exchanged pleasantries, but Ryan wasted no time in diving into the conversation. "We need to talk about the direction of our negotiations and about Anna," he said, met with an unwavering gaze from Mark that suggested he, too, recognized the tension in the air. "Let's not beat around the bush then. What's been happening behind closed doors?" Mark replied, his tone steady, indicating he was ready for the unfiltered truth. Ryan swallowed hard, grappling with the internal urge to conceal his fears. "But this wasn't the time for half-truths. I have doubts about Anna. She seems to think a partnership with certain connections is beneficial for our growth, but what does that really mean for us?" Mark's brow furrowed. "I sensed something was off. It's a risky play to bring those players into our circle, Ryan. We could be jeopardizing everything." Ryan nodded, feeling a sense of mutual understanding solidify between them, a rare moment of honesty. He realized then that trust could still exist, but it required engagement, dialogue, and shared vulnerability. As they plotted the next steps towards their future, Ryan felt the urgency building within him. This was no longer merely about survival, it was about redefining the future. He needed to confront Anna and set boundaries, but first, securing his strategic plan with Mark was fundamental. He had uncovered the fractured perception of trust and resolved to rebuild not just the company, but his own identity, and just as he felt momentum building within him, the reality settled again like fog. If betrayal loomed dangerously close, confrontation with Anna was inevitable. What new revelations awaited him in that conflict? He pushed aside the apprehension, willing himself to confront the uncertainty. The time had come to face the consequences of ambition and the weight of friendship gone awry. As Ryan prepared to meet Anna, a knot twisted in his stomach. The coffee shop, once a refuge, had turned into a cage of swirling doubts. He had moved from a place of uncertainty to one of determination, but confronting Anna would be a test unlike any he had faced before. The stakes were rising. His emotional equilibrium hinged on this interaction. That he arrived at the designated restaurant, a place where they had celebrated their early successes. The environment felt hostile now, the familiar decor transformed into reminders of trust and camaraderie now tainted by betrayal. As he walked in, he noticed Anna seated at a table, flipping through her phone. For a moment, the warmth of their past overlaid the tension in the air, but Ryan reminded himself of what lay at stake. "Ryan," she greeted, her smile a mixture of warmth and uncertainty. "I'm glad you could make it." "Let's cut to the chase," he replied, summoning a calm he barely felt. "We need to talk about your idea of new partnerships. It's risky and may jeopardize everything we've built." Her expression shifted from surprise to defiance, eyebrows raised, as if she had anticipated his words but couldn't fathom his outright rejection. "I did what I thought was necessary for our growth. You act as if this is about trust. Don't you see? We need stronger ties, and that requires bold moves." Ryan leaned in, suppressing his frustration. "Boldness is one thing, recklessness is another. Who exactly are we trusting when you suggest aligning with players who operate outside our ethos? Your vision seems to overlook the consequences." He was surprised by the clarity of his thoughts. This was no longer merely about business, it was an exploration of their once unbreakable bond. As he spoke, he recognized the personal stakes involved, each word laden with the weight of an uncharted territory he now had to navigate. Each choice comes with risks, Ryan, Anna replied, her voice softening. You can't control everything. Growth means adapting to change, and taking advantage of opportunities. Opportunities? He echoed, the tension pulsating between them. Last time I checked, those opportunities you're flirting with could bring us down. Are you willing to gamble our integrity for some quick gains? Anna's defensiveness unfolded into anger, her tone sharpening. You think you're the only one who cares about our reputation? You don't understand the bigger picture. This isn't just about keeping things comfortable, it's about moving forward, evolving. He leaned back, taking a moment to assess her perspective. Yes, she had a point about adapting, but he felt an instinctual resistance against values bending under pressure. Tell me this, do you believe the ends justify the means? He pressed, his voice steady. Sometimes, yes. Business isn't black and white. Relationships can be messy, they change and evolve, she countered. Then, what are we even building, Anna? A respected business or a broken foundation? The words tasted bitter as they left his lips, but he felt a surge of resolve. He needed clarity, not just for his empire, but to discover who he was capable of becoming as a leader. Realization slowly dawned on him. Their partnership was not merely defined by shared goals but also by ideological disagreements. He had come seeking resolution but was instead faced with a larger moral dilemma. He knew now that leadership would test integrity just as it demanded a plunge into the unknown. Maybe this isn't about who's right or wrong, he began, striving to retain a sense of diplomacy amidst the brewing storm. But about what kind of future we envision and how we want to get there. Anna's hardened expression softened momentarily, yet the shadows of conflict lingered. The meeting had turned from a confrontation into an exploration of conflicting dreams, leading him to wonder if their paths were still aligned. Ryan's heart raced as he considered the implications of what lay ahead. This was not merely a business transaction, this was personal. Dissecting their differences might lead to a painful revelation. Could they evolve together, or was this the parting of ways? As they slowly navigated through layers of ambition and loyalty, Ryan felt better equipped to confront the tides of personal and professional conflict awaiting him. But the enormity of what still lurked beneath loomed larger than before. Would the fractures in their alliance heal, or expose deeper cracks leading to their inevitable downfall? With Anna's motives laid bare, he realized the next step would demand even greater courage. What hidden truths would surface if he dared to expose the very foundation of their partnership? The weight of uncertainty hung in the air as Ryan locked eyes with Anna, the intensity of their exchange reverberating through him. He could sense the invisible barrier between them, a thick wall forged from trust once genuine, now cracked and fractured. Each heartbeat echoed the urgency of now. He could no longer sit idly by as the tides of change threatened to sweep them apart. No more half measures, he finally stated, his voice pitched low but resolute. If we're leading this venture together, it demands radical honesty. We can't hide behind polite disagreements anymore. We need to know where we truly stand. Anna's expression shifted, a subtle acknowledgement of the challenge Ryan had thrown down not just to her, but to himself as well. Gazing into her eyes, he saw a tumult of emotions fighting for dominance, defiance, fear, and perhaps, a flicker of hope. All right then, she replied, fortifying her stance. What do you propose? A trust exercise? Just because you're uneasy doesn't mean we should throw everything out the window. No, it's about examining our principles. I want to know what drives you, Anna. What does growth mean to you now? The inquiry felt like an involuntary pulse of his changing perspective, challenging the very fabric of his understanding. Growth means getting ahead, pushing boundaries, even if that means working with those we might not like, Anna countered, her frustration bubbling again. If we stay safe and refuse to engage, we disappear under the weight of our own caution. Ryan shook his head, stifling the rising anger that threatened to derail this fragile dialogue. And at what cost? I want to build something solid, not just to exist. I want to create a legacy. With each word, he was digging deeper into who he wanted to become, not just as a businessman, but as an individual who resonated with integrity. Legacy, she scoffed, a bitter smile creeping across her lips. What good is legacy if you're left with nothing to show for it? If we don't innovate and adapt, we become obsolete. Don't you see how many companies have fallen because they clung too tightly to their ideals? The starkness of her argument threw him momentarily off balance. Yes, many had faltered, but could he really allow their mission to devolve into opportunism? Anna, ideals are not chains. They are our compass. If we lose sight of our ethics, we might win the battle but lose ourselves in the process. He took a deep breath, feeling the challenge of the moment weigh on him. I know we're both here because we want success, but what if we disagree fundamentally on how to achieve it? What if we've outgrown each other? A weighty silence enveloped the space, and Ryan suddenly felt as if he stood on the precipice of something monumental. This confrontation was reshaping him, testing the boundaries of his character. He had to stand firm in his desires but was unsure how to reconcile them with her ambitious vision. Anna looked away, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, an instinctual move that betrayed a moment of vulnerability. I've always considered us a team, Ryan. You're the one I relied upon when the odds felt insurmountable. I thought we understood each other. And that's exactly why it matters, he replied, his voice softening. I still respect the partnership, but partnership also demands confronting uncomfortable truths. We can't tiptoe around it any longer, we either align or diverge. With that, he sensed a shift. The emotional fog began to clear, and Ryan realized he was ready to confront the implications head-on. He could either let fear dictate his choices or muster the boldness to challenge her thinking, which now felt like an essential part of his growth. The irony of the situation struck him. Hadn't he sought out conflict to exacerbate clarity? But clarity had birthed a different kind of uncertainty, and the implications of being at odds with someone he had once held so dearly loomed, initiating a whirlwind of introspection. As the conversation seemed to teeter on the brink of unveiling something vital, Ryan prepared himself for the possibility of truths that might shift the ground beneath their feet. In this examination of trust and ambition, could they still find a way to coexist, or was the chasm of their ideological battle too wide to bridge? He braced himself for the answers that loomed ahead, uncertain yet electrifying. Anna, what if we've reached a point of no return? What if confronting our deepest conflicts means losing everything we've built? Ryan's breathing quickened as Anna's silence stretched, each second heavy with unspoken words. The emotional risk they faced felt monumental. He knew they needed a breakthrough, but the deeper he probed, the more tangled their dialogue became. The stakes weren't just about business anymore, they were about their shared history and future. Anna, he urged carefully, testing the waters further. What happens when ambition overshadows our values? If we push too hard, too fast, we just recreate an environment that ends up consuming us. Her gaze hardened, and the defiance surged back with an intensity that nearly crackled in the air. You think I'm reckless just because I challenge the status quo? I'm trying to paint a picture where we aren't shackled by idealism. I'm doing it for us, for this company. Her voice echoed in his mind, a mixture of conviction and desperation that resonated against his own desires. Ryan shifted in his seat as the churning conflict ignited a flame within him. He wanted to reach her, to bridge the distance between their conflicting visions. Challenge is crucial, he admitted thoughtfully, taking care to temper his tone. But at what point does the pursuit of success cloud judgment? If we begin sacrificing our fundamental beliefs for immediate gains, will we still recognize ourselves in the end? Staring into her eyes, he noticed the flicker of doubt behind her unwavering facade. This fight was as much within her as it was between them. He wondered if her drive stemmed from insecurity, from a fear of failure that mirrored his own. Ryan couldn't just push any further, he needed a method that broke through the tensions, something resonant and real. How about this? He proposed, a surge of inspiration igniting within him. Let us list out our core values, what we genuinely stand for, not what is trendy or profitable. Let us really open ourselves up and see if we're both in agreement. If we're not, then we need to confront what that means for us and our partnership. The suggestion hung in the air, an olive branch extended amid the fierce tempest. For a moment, Anna's expression softened, revealing a hint of vulnerability he'd seen before. It gave him hope that perhaps they could find a common ground, a way to reforge what felt irreparably strained. "I don't want to lose this," she whispered, her voice more vulnerable now, tinged with a mix of skepticism and yearning. "But how do we even begin? What if we still collide in the end?" "We begin by being honest," he replied firmly, feeling the stirrings of new determination rise within him. "This isn't just a business venture anymore, it's about who we are. If we can share our truths without fear, then maybe, just maybe, we'll find a way forward." The conversation had pivoted, and Ryan sensed that the promise of vulnerability was a turning point. They could begin piecing together something tangible from the charred remnants of discord. Yet, even as optimism flickered in his chest, worry pressed against his mind. What if revealing their shadows laid bare fractures that proved irreparable? As they both sat still, contemplating the path ahead, Ryan felt the weight of his own ambition wrestle with the evolving understanding of trust. Would they forge new bonds from this experience, or had they set in motion the very unraveling they dreaded? Anna's hand moved on the table, instinctively seeking his, the gesture both tentative and profound. It would take more than a shared trust exercise to mend the rift between their visions. The road ahead was anything but secure. In that charged moment, he recognized that what he desired most was not just stability for the company, but to rekindle the sense of purpose within himself. The time had come to face down an unsettling truth: transformation required conscious upheaval. "Anna," he prompted, steeling himself, "are you ready to confront every layer of our partnership? Because this is only the beginning of a much deeper exploration." The quiet lingered as they locked eyes, tension and resolve twining together. With the stakes laid bare, the next step promised to reveal truths yet unacknowledged, journeys they must undertake through vulnerability and revelation. What lay ahead felt like the unveiling of everything they had avoided, a reckoning that would redefine the very essence of who they were together. Would they emerge stronger, or would it all come crumbling down in pursuit of honest transparency? As the weight of their confrontation settled in the air between them, Ryan was acutely aware that this was more than just a business conversation. It was an invitation to dive deep into the emotional current flowing beneath their partnership. He could feel his pulse quickening, adrenaline surging through him as if he was standing on the edge of a precipice. The stakes felt higher than ever. It was not simply about profits and losses but about reclaiming who they both were, beneath the layers of ambition and strategy. Anna's eyes flickered with a mixture of apprehension and hope. Ryan watched her, noting the small gestures she made, her fingers tracing the wood grain of the table, her breathing becoming shallow and unsteady. Moments like these, he understood, exposed the fragility of even the best partnerships. If they were going to confront their tensions, it would require more than just a list. They needed vulnerability. "Anna," he began, his voice steady but laced with urgency, "let's focus on what drives us. What truly matters to you beyond the bottom line? What do you want people to say about us when they think of this company?" She hesitated, seemingly weighing her thoughts against the starkness of his question. Ryan could see minds racing, walls building. The hesitation galvanizing him to push even further. "I want respect," she finally admitted, her defiance cracking just enough to allow a glimpse of authenticity. "I want people to recognize what we've built, to see that ambition doesn't equate to moral bankruptcy." Ryan nodded slowly, his heart racing at the fragility of her confession. There it was, the intersection of ambition and integrity laid bare. He thought of his own values. Was he equally ambitious? Did he crave recognition merely for the success itself, or did he want a legacy rooted in ethical conduct? The distinction mattered. That's a good start. He kept his voice encouraging, nudging her toward deeper revelations. "For me, it's about connection. Creating a space where people feel they belong. If I'm honest, I've always believed that business could be more than a transaction. It should foster community." Her brow furrowed slightly, as if processing how their individual motivations intertwined. Then what do you think we've been doing? Haven't we existed just to climb the ladder? That's just it. We've been so focused on climbing that we forgot to ask what kind of ladder it is. Ryan leaned forward, intent on building the bridge between them. We need to know whether our steps align with our principles. If profits overshadow our commitment to people, then what sets us apart from anyone else? The silence hung heavy, interspersed with muffled city sounds filtering in from outside, the honks of cabs, the shuffle of passers-by. Ryan's mind raced, wrapped in the implications of their dialogue. If they couldn't reconcile their individual approaches, the energy that initially bound them could easily become the force that tore them apart. Anna, what if we take this conversation to the next level? He proposed boldly, feeling excitement prick at his insides. How about we ask our team for their input? Create a collective values document. That way, we can lead transparently and involve everyone. We can build a foundation over the lines of respect you crave and the belonging I desire. He watched as her eyebrows arched high with surprise, the tension momentarily deflating between them. You're serious? Absolutely. This could be our first step towards redefining how we engage with not just each other, but everyone involved in this journey. Anna took a deep breath, assessing the prospect that invited her to confront her insecurities in the presence of others. And as she did, Ryan sensed something shifting. It was a risk, edging closer to a shared vulnerability that had long felt buried. We'll have to brace ourselves for honest feedback too, she said quietly, the defiance now shifting into determination, a flicker of excitement duplicating the existing fire in Ryan's chest. But it's worth it. The optimism felt intoxicating, yet Ryan could also feel a simmering fear meld with it. What if their team's truths overshadowed their vision? What if this act of transparency exposed fractures neither of them were prepared to confront? Then it's a collective journey, isn't it? He replied quietly, feeling a surge of responsibility coupled with anticipation. But it's a risk I believe we can navigate together. With their hands still connected, the seed of a plan began to grow, laced with uncertainty yet tinged with hope, the first step towards shaping a new identity as a team. Yet in the back of his mind loomed looming shadows of doubt, the knowledge that revelation often carries both light and darkness. As they shifted to draft their plan, Ryan's heart raced with the enticing thrill of possibility for growth, for connection, for the chance to explore their true selves against the backdrop of profound honesty. He wondered if he was ready for what they might uncover together. With one question lingering in the air, would they find clarity, or would digging deeper unearth irreparable cracks? Ryan sat in silence after the meeting, replaying the day's emotional roller coaster through his mind. The tension with Anna had propelled him into uncharted territory, forcing him to confront not just her ambition but also his own principles. The encounter had shifted something within him, a realization that leadership wasn't just about maintaining control but also fostering open dialogue. The prospect of collective vulnerability ignited a spark of hope in him. As days passed, Ryan embraced the challenge of revisiting the core values of his company. He collaborated actively with his team, initiating open forums where everyone could express their thoughts and aspirations. Trust, connection, and respect became the new pillars that defined their mission. With each conversation, Ryan felt the weight of doubt lift, replaced by a solid determination to redefine their purpose. He was not in this alone, they were shaping a legacy together. Anna, too, had transformed. The anxiety that hung over their initial confrontations began to dissolve as she found her own voice. She engaged in honest discourse, navigating through the complexities of risk and reward, and they refocused their energy toward shared goals. Together, they drew a roadmap for their future, balancing ambition with ethical considerations, a synthesis of both their philosophies. Then came the day of the presentation. Their newly founded values document would be unveiled company-wide, marking the culmination of weeks of hard work and introspection. As Ryan stood at the front of the room, staring into the ocean of familiar faces, he felt an empowering surge of confidence. This wasn't just a document, it represented their renewed commitment to one another and the future they were actively choosing. They weren't just a business, they were a community. Today, we're redefining what it means to be a part of this organization, he began, his voice steady. It's about more than profits. It's about fostering mutual respect, ensuring every voice matters, and building a legacy we can all be proud of. As he spoke, he saw nods of agreement and smiles of excitement ripple through the crowd, a palpable shift in energy that recognized their collective journey. The feedback poured in, overflowing with enthusiasm and positivity. Employees were inspired, pitching ideas and expressing their appreciation for the collaborative spirit rekindled among them. Ryan felt a swell of pride. They had all engaged in a process that transformed trepidation into proactive engagement. The harshness of the past was becoming a catalyst for an invigorating surge of collaboration. Later that week, as Ryan celebrated with Anna, he realized that they had overcome a formidable chapter, reshaping their alliance from one marred by betrayal to one grounded in shared goals. Their bond had morphed into a partnership synonymous with understanding, one that upheld the weight of trust they had worked to restore. Through this process, Ryan didn't just transform as a leader, he discovered a deeper, more authentic facet of himself. The confrontation with Anna, the introspection, and the subsequent engagement with his team had illuminated parts of his character he hadn't recognized before: his capacity for empathy, his willingness to listen, and his desire to create an environment rooted in transparency. An unexpected message from a competitor entered Ryan's inbox the next day with a proposition to collaborate on a project that aligned with their new values. The prospect of linking forces with another entity excited him. But instead of jumping in headfirst as he once would have done, he orchestrated a strategy session with Anna and Mark to determine the risks before proceeding. It was a refreshing change, a testament to his growth, recognizing that caution and collaboration won out over impulsivity. With a palpable confidence and newfound sense of purpose, Ryan understood that the chaos of the previous months had transformed him into a leader willing to embrace vulnerability. He had taught himself the art of listening, engagement, and operation within a framework of integrity, ultimately leading him toward greater achievements for both the company and himself. Walking through the corridors of his business, he felt a serene pride wash over him. He had navigated the storm and emerged settled on solid ground. He had not only conquered the chaos created by betrayal but also revitalized a legacy that was now richer in values than ever before. The call to action resonated as he reflected on everything they had achieved. Ryan realized this was only the beginning. He had proven to himself that growth was possible through understanding and collaboration. Now, the world could witness the transformation of a leader who had taken control of his narrative and was ready to shape a brighter future. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.